Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really undertaking a monumental task. We're navigating the dense, complex, and, well, to be honest, the anxiety-inducing reality of the Greater Toronto Area housing market. And not just housing, but the entire Canadian household budget as we head into 2026.
It's a huge topic.
It is. And our mission today is to cut right through the noise. We've gone through 18 different sources, everything from the year-end data from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, detailed CMHC reports, financial analyses from rates.ca.
Economic forecasts, even hyper-local reports on things like new building codes.
Exactly. And we're here to provide you, whether you're a buyer trying to figure out when to jump in, a homeowner staring down a mortgage renewal, or, a real estate stakeholder, with the essential synthesized intelligence you need right now. So let's just unpack this really unusual situation we're in. 2025 was supposed to be the year of the housing reset.
And that was the term everyone was using, the reset.
And on paper, it happened. We saw benchmark prices fall back, pretty significantly from those dizzying peaks in 2022. Interest rates, while still high, they kind of eased off their absolute high.
Price stabilized.
So on paper, affordability improved. But, and this is the crucial disconnect that defined the whole year, and it's the core of our deep dive, why didn't that bring buyers rushing back?
It's the central question.
It is. Transaction volumes hit a near silence. We're talking a multi-decade low.
And that disconnect is the entire story. We're trying to move beyond just tracking prices here and really connect the dots between these big macro trends and the incredibly sharp micro stress points that people are feeling in their own budgets.
Right.
We want to show you what this quiet market really means for your long-term budget, your purchasing power, and maybe most importantly, where the leverage now sits in the real estate transaction.
That's a key point, the leverage.
Yeah. We're going to synthesize data from TREA, the CMHC specialized analysis, and the story for 2026 isn't just about the average home price, not at all. It's about this seismic shockwave of mortgage renewals coming down the pipe. It's about the severe structural failures in our labor and housing supply policy. And it's about the massive erosion of consumer confidence because of the rising cost of, everything else.
Everything.
So our focus today is to really understand what is holding buyers back and what that actually means for where prices go from here. The leverage has absolutely shifted, but it feels like buyers just don't have the conviction to use it.
Okay, so let's start with the hard numbers then. Let's dig into the 2025 GTA market based on that TREB data. When we look at the full calendar year, that narrative of a more affordable market did sort of materialize, but the market's health metrics tell a far more complex story.
We really do.
So the headline figures for all of 2025. Home sales through the TRE MLS system, they declined to 62,433.
Which is a substantial drop.
It's down 11.2% compared to 2024. And that, right there, that volume reduction, is the first big sign of buyer hesitancy.
And what makes that sales decline so crucial is what was happening on the supply side at the exact same time. New listings told the complete opposite story.
Right. They were up.
They were up by 10.1% year over year, a total of 186,753 new listings. So you've got fewer buyers showing up to the party and way more options becoming available on the market.
A classic supply and demand shift.
It's the foundational reason we saw a price correction. It's economics 101, really.
And so the number everyone watches, the average selling price, it did reflect this slowdown. The average price across the GTA in 2025 was $1,067,968.
Still a big number.
Still a very big number, but that represents a 4.7% decline from the 2024 average, which was over $1.12 million. So that average price drop is what feeds that optimistic reset narrative.
And what's fascinating here is really understanding the mechanism of that price drop. The TRREB president, Daniel Steinfeld, he was explicit about it. He noted that the elevated listing inventory was the key.
More homes just sitting there.
Exactly. More homes sitting on the market, fewer bidding wars. It just allowed selling prices to be negotiated downward. This negotiation, he suggested, is what improved affordability and critically set the market up for recovery.
So in his view, the market stabilized not through some big surge in optimism, but through forced concessions from sellers.
That's it. Sellers had to give ground.
Okay, but I want to introduce a point here for our listeners who are deep in this space. That 4.7% drop in the average price, that can be skewed, right? It depends on the mix of homes sold. If fewer mansions sell, that pulls the average down, even if a typical bungalow's price hasn't changed much.
That is an absolutely critical point, and it's why we have to look at the more sophisticated metrics. Is the market less expensive than 2 years ago? Yes. But to call it affordable, That's still a huge stretch. We have to remember the context. The period from, say, 2018 to the peak in early 2022 saw such explosive, just unprecedented growth that even a massive 26.5% decline from the peak.
And that peak was February 2022.
Yeah, February 2022. That 26.5% drop translates to nearly $340,000 off the average price. But it still only takes us down to levels we saw around January 2021.
So it hasn't even erased the whole pandemic boom.
Not even close. So yes, prices are down, but we are nowhere near pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, so let's drill down into December 2025 specifically, because it really capped off the year and solidified these trends. Analysts were calling that month near silence. Sales for the month were just 3,697. That's down almost 9% year over year.
And that's where the market depth or lack of it really comes into play. If we look at the pricing for December, the average price fell 5.1% to just over $1 million. But for our stakeholders, for people who really follow this, we need to focus on the MLS HPI composite benchmark.
The HPI, right, the home price index.
Yeah, we watch the HPI because it accounts for the actual characteristics of the homes that sold. The size, the age, the location. It's a much cleaner metric of true value change than just a simple average.
So what did the HPI do?
The HPI was down 6.3% year over year in December. So that HPI decline, it suggests that the true underlying value of a typical home in the GTA is definitely receding. It's not just a change in the sales mix.
And this quiet ending really solidifies the central story of 2025. Transaction volume was the real casualty. I saw economists at the National Bank of Canada crunch the numbers. And they confirmed that cumulative home sales in 2025 marked it as the quietest year for transactions since the year 2000.
A 25-year low.
A 25-year low. It's just staggering.
And that immediately raises a big question about inventory dynamics. Total active listings for December, they hit a record high for that month. 17,005. That's up a whopping 17.5% from the December before.
So more and more homes for sale.
But we need to analyze why that inventory is rising. And the analysis is crucial. It's rising primarily because of slower absorption.
Meaning buyers are just stepping back, homes are sitting on the market longer.
Exactly. It's not a panic of new sellers flooding the market with listings.
So we're not seeing a fire sale, we're seeing market paralysis. Demand exhaustion is doing the heavy lifting here, not some supply shock of listings from people in financial trouble. That's a vital distinction.
It is.
Which brings us directly to the central paradox of 2025. Prices are down 26.5% from the peak. Millions in equity, just gone. Interest rates have eased from their highs. So given the market is objectively more affordable, why aren't buyers coming back? Is this really a reset where the market is getting healthy, or is this simply a market collapse that sellers are just managing by, reluctantly lowering prices and pulling listings? How do we tell the difference?
That is the critical question. And the primary force holding back demand is almost entirely psychological and macroeconomic. It's confidence, or really the severe lack of it.
So how do you define the difference?
A healthy correction would see strong transaction volume at these new lower prices. Paralysis sees low volume, and what we are seeing is absolutely paralysis.
Okay, so what's causing the paralysis?
Well, our sources all point to three interlocking factors. First, and this is the big one, is just economic uncertainty. TRREB's Chief Information Officer, Jason Mercer, he and other analysts pointed directly to this lingering trade uncertainty, specifically with the U.S.
The trade war, tariffs, that whole thing.
Right, tariffs, threats of more levies, particularly in manufacturing and commodities, all of that just dampens economic growth, and it discourages businesses from investing, and critically, it discourages consumers from taking on massive long-term debt.
And that uncertainty, I imagine, translates directly into the second point, which has to be employment confidence.
Exactly. TREB was very clear on this. Households have to feel absolutely secure in their job situation before they commit to what is still a massive long-term monthly mortgage payment.
Even if the sticker price looks a bit better.
Yeah, even if the price looks better on paper, the long-term debt obligation requires security. And that security just hasn't returned yet for enough people.
And what's the third factor?
The third factor is a really crucial nuance that Realtor Tom Story pointed out. He calls it the true cost of ownership.
Okay.
So while the nominal price of a house changed meaningfully, it fell by nearly 5% annually, The true monthly cost of owning that house, if you need a mortgage, changed only minorly.
Because the interest rates are so much higher.
Exactly. The affordability gains you got from the lower price were basically canceled out by the still elevated carrying costs, especially when you compare it to the crazy low rates of 2020 and 2021. So we might have a reset in price, but we don't have a reset in the actual burden of the monthly payment.
So if that urgency, that bidding war insanity is gone, the whole structure of the market has to change. It sounds like negotiation has quietly replaced urgency as the main force.
That's a perfect way to put it. The mechanics of price discovery right now are fascinating to watch. Prices are drifting lower, but it's incredibly uneven. Sellers are psychologically anchored to the crazy prices they saw in 2021 and early 2022. They don't want to accept less. But buyers, they sense that the leverage has completely shifted.
And they're refusing to chase those prices.
They're refusing to chase. So you get this stalemate.
What's the result of that stalemate?
The result, as the data shows, is this long period of negotiation where the seller either has to eventually give ground or their house just sits on the market for months.
And we're seeing that in the data.
Oh, absolutely. The median sale-to-list price ratio has fallen into the mid-90% range.
And that's a huge deal.
It's hugely significant. It means the vast majority of homes are now selling for below the asking price. For buyers, this is a profoundly favorable environment that we haven't seen in a decade.
Right.
Patience, pricing discipline, a willingness to offer substantially below list, those are the things being rewarded now. Overpriced listings aren't being rescued by market momentum anymore. They sit, they get reduced, or they're pulled off the market entirely. The bottom line is simple. Buyers can afford to wait. Sellers are the ones who are finally blinking.
That structural reset in housing leverage, that really sets the stage for the rest of our discussion. It's a market that's just waiting for that one missed ingredient, consumer confidence. And that confidence is being severely eroded by budget pressures that has nothing to do with real estate. So let's shift now from market prices to the household budget pressures that are fundamentally feeding that loss of confidence.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so when we talk about consumer confidence, there is no greater immediate, specific, and mathematically unavoidable threat to financial stability in Canada heading into 2026 than this coming mortgage renewal shock.
It is the elephant in the room.
A huge one. And it's going to hit hundreds of thousands of otherwise stable households directly in their monthly budget.
The Bank of Canada detailed this explicitly in its recent reports. They estimate that an astonishing 60% of all outstanding mortgages across the country will be up for renewal by the end of 2026.
60%. That is a massive portion of the market.
It's enormous. This isn't theoretical. This is a date looming on the calendar for 500,000 families.
And the profile of these mortgages is key, right? They're mostly those pandemic-era 5-year fixed-rate mortgages.
The most popular product at the time, yeah. People locked in when rates were at historic lows. We're talking sub 2.5%.
And now they're facing a world where a comparable fixed-term product is maybe, 4.5% to 5.0%?
At least. And the financial implication for these homeowners is not just significant, it is truly seismic. As those low fixed rates are replaced by today's higher rates, monthly payments are expected to rise by up to 20% for a huge number of these households.
20%.
Let's make this concrete, because the numbers are what matter. Imagine a homeowner in the GTA took out a $500,000 mortgage in 2021. They locked in a rate of 1.99%.
Which is a great rate at the time.
Fantastic rate. Their monthly payment would have been about $2,118. Now let's say they renew that exact same remaining balance in 2026 at a market rate of, say, 4.75%.
Okay.
That new monthly payment catapults to approximately $2,875.
Wow. That's a monthly increase of $757.
$757 extra per month. And that number, compounded across the country, is what the Bank of Canada is talking about when they forecast payments rising by $300 to $800 a month for many, many households.
And that puts just intense, unavoidable pressure on disposable income. It forces families who thought their budget was stable to completely rethink everything. Retirement savings, groceries, kids' activities.
Everything. And this is exactly why households lack the confidence to take on new debt. If they aren't even sure they can handle their existing debt, why on earth would they risk signing up for more?
Right.
TRREB's CEO, John DeMichel, he recognized this pressure. He actually issued a specific call for governments to take action now to provide tax relief for consumers and help ease this rising cost of living. He said families need financial breathing room.
So let's look at those compounding shocks. We've compiled the data on the rising cost of everything else. Our sources detail 5 categories that are hitting budgets the hardest, and they're definitely limiting that financial breathing room.
Yeah, let's break those down, starting with the most visceral one, the one that's truly hitting wallets hard.
Groceries.
Groceries and dining out. Food inflation is probably the biggest single persistent component of non-housing pressure. The latest Canada Food Price Report, it forecasts overall food prices to rise by another 4% to 6% in 2026.
And that's on top of the massive increases we've already seen. This isn't a minor fluctuation. It's just sustained, relentless pressure on the kitchen table.
And when you put that into dollar terms, the scale of the crisis becomes clear. For a typical family of 4, this translates into spending nearly $995 more on groceries next year. The total bill is estimated at about $17,572 for the year.
That is a massive immediate jump that you can't put off or negotiate away. We're seeing the human cost of this, right? Reports of record numbers of working, employed people turning to food banks. Food Banks Canada reported nearly 2.2 million visits in March of 2025.
The highest number in history. That level of need demonstrates this catastrophic erosion of the household budget. And then that inflation just ripples into other areas. Dining out is also set to climb 4% to 6%.
Right, because of input costs for restaurants.
Input costs, but also the persistent staffing and wage challenges that restaurant owners are facing due to those labor shortages we'll get to.
Okay, so what's the second major area of budget stress?
Insurance hikes. Home and auto. This has become an unavoidable tax on existence right now. Premiums just keep surging, and it's driven by forces completely outside of your control as a consumer.
I've definitely felt this one.
Yeah. In October 2025 alone, home insurance rates saw a hefty 6.8% hike, and auto insurance saw a 7.3% hike. And insurance expert Daniel Ivins noted this upward trend is virtually guaranteed to persist into 2026.
So what's driving this? Why is it going up so relentlessly?
Ivins points to 2 main factors. First, climate-related disasters. We're just seeing more frequent and more costly severe weather events.
Like the ice storms in 2025.
The ice storms, major floods, wildfires across the country. These events force insurers to pay out more, and they pass that risk right back to you, the homeowner, in the form of higher premiums.
The second factor.
The second is inflation and geopolitical factors. It's just more expensive for them to do business. The cost of building materials, the cost of specialized labor for repairs, the cost of replacement car parts. It's a perfect storm for higher premiums.
So what you're saying is, even if I'm a perfect driver, I've never filed a claim, I'm a diligent homeowner. Global climate risk and supply chain inflation are forcing my premiums up regardless. It feels like this unavoidable compounding tax on ownership.
Precisely. And because these costs are going up regardless of your individual behavior, it leads to a really important actionable tip for you, the listener. You have to become relentless in what we call discount farming.
Discount farming, I like that.
It means you have to be proactive. Reinforce your roof. Clear your gutters to reduce potential storm damage. For your car, maintain safe habits, and crucially, use winter tires. That alone can get you up to a 5% discount on car insurance.
You really have to hunt for these things.
You have to. Most importantly, call your broker immediately. Review every possible discount employee programs, retiree benefits, group memberships. That small effort can save you hundreds against these inevitable premium hikes.
Okay, so moving on. Third and fourth categories. Transportation costs. This seems to be rising whether you drive or take transit.
It is. Getting around is more expensive across the board. Rental car rates are predicted to go up another 2.5% to 3% in 2026. That's driven by steady demand, but also ongoing supply challenges with new vehicle production.
And public transit is no safe haven.
Definitely not, which hits low-income workers and students the hardest. Fares are rising everywhere. Montreal riders will see a 3% increase. Here in Ontario, Ottawa's OC Transpo fares went up 10 cents. Mississauga's Miway Presto fares climbed to $3.50, and cash fares hit $4.50.
And when you combine those rising fares with higher auto insurance and gas prices, the total transportation cost just takes a bigger and bigger bite out of your budget, especially with all the return-to-office mandates. Okay, what's the final and maybe most structural pressure point?
It's in services and labor. This is where the big structural problems in the Canadian economy intersect directly with your personal budget and just reinforce inflation. It's all driven by tight labor markets, which creates what economists call wage inflation.
Right.
Economist Rosalind Coonan emphasizes that Canada has serious labor shortages at all levels. This inevitably pushes wages up as employers desperately compete for talent.
Which sounds good for the worker.
It is good for the worker. But when employers are forced to pay higher wages, they absolutely pass those increased labor costs on in the price of their products and services, which is bad for the consumer.
So it's a paradox.
A total paradox. The Bank of Canada notes things are improving a bit. Solid job gains in the fall. Unemployment rate dropped to 6.5% in November. But the shortage is still profound. In Q3 of 2025, Canada still had 492,500 job vacancies.
500,000 job vacancies.
500,000. It means employers are still struggling, especially in high-demand sectors like construction, healthcare, and hospitality, and they are competing fiercely for talent.
And for you, the consumer, this translates directly into higher prices for basic essential services.
Exactly. If you need to hire a roofer to fix a leak, or you go get a haircut, or you need your car repaired, you are the one absorbing the cost of that underlying labor shortage.
So even if your own wages are rising, which is great, the cost of the services you rely on is rising just as fast, or maybe even faster.
Which ensures that the financial breathing room you need to regain confidence and re-enter the housing market remains completely elusive.
It's a vicious cycle. Fear and compounding costs. So we've established buyer demand is exhausted, not because prices are too high anymore, but because the foundation of consumer confidence, your ability to handle that $300 to $800 mortgage hike alongside a soaring grocery bill, it's just structurally eroding. And that uncertainty paralyzes the market.
It does.
So the conversation always comes back to supply. Even if consumer confidence magically returned tomorrow, we face a massive, years-long structural deficit in housing. The federal government has set these ambitious construction goals, acknowledging that Canada needs about 3.2 million new homes in the next 10 years just to keep up. That target includes 2.5 million projected completions, plus this calculated gap of 690,000 units by 2035.
And this is where a government policy review from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the PBO, reveals a stunning, almost unbelievable disconnect.
Okay.
Despite the desperate stated national need for millions of new homes, the PBO found that federal money earmarked for existing housing programs is expected to be reduced by a shocking 56%.
56%, a reduction.
A reduction. To put that into perspective, we are talking about billions of dollars being pulled out of the system. Funding for crucial existing programs like the Housing Accelerator Fund,
which speeds up municipal permits.
Right. And the Canada Housing Benefit, which gives direct relief to low-income renters. Funding for those is projected to drop from $9.8 billion in 2026 down to just $4.3 billion by 2028-2029.
That's a colossal cut. It means the CMHC's operational budget, the traditional engine of federal housing initiatives, is going to shrink significantly.
It is. The PBO analysis suggests that the political will to fund the existing solutions is just dramatically waning right at the moment the crisis is peaking, and that uncertainty paralyzes builders and municipalities who rely on that funding for long-term planning.
But hold on, the government recently announced this high-profile Build Canada Homes initiative, the BCH. It was backed by $7.3 billion in planned spending. Surely that massive cash injection offsets the cuts to the other programs.
That is certainly the political narrative. But the reality, based on the PBO's independent, nonpartisan review, is, well, it's profoundly disappointing. It's maybe the most cynical data point in all of our sources.
Wow.
The PBO concluded that the contribution of the BCH initiative will likely be modest at best because of bureaucratic complexity and project lead times.
How modest are we talking?
Specifically, over the next 5 years, the BCH agency is projected to add only about 26,000 units.
26,000. Over 5 years.
That's right. It translates to approximately 5,200 net new units per year.
5,200 units per year. That number is astonishingly low. Did the PBO give a reason why $7.3 billion is expected to be so wildly inefficient?
They did. They attributed it mainly to the bureaucratic hurdles. Land acquisition, procurement, site preparation, all of that takes time. Furthermore, they pointed to the severe national labor constraints, the same labor shortages we just talked about, which limit the pace at which new projects can actually be built.
So you combine bureaucracy with a shortage of skilled trades and even $7.3 billion moves at a snail's pace.
Exactly. And the comparison to the national need is where the number becomes, as one analyst put it, truly laughable. The PBO calculated that Canada needs 65,000 extra homes per year just to close the current housing gap by 2035.
And this new program adds 5,200.
So adding 5,200 new units It represents a mere 2.1% increase in the housing completions we need to solve the problem. It suggests the government's efforts are barely scratching the surface of the deficit they themselves identified.
And this policy failure has direct, tangible consequences for everyone. Construction activity is already expected to decline because the low sales numbers over the last 2 years have dampened new project starts.
2024 saw an impressive 245,120 new dwellings started, but that pipeline is now shrinking.
So this shrinking pipeline of future supply, combined with relentless demand from high immigration, is just dire news for long-term affordability.
It ensures that prices will inevitably rebound sharply, maybe even spike, once consumer confidence finally returns. And for many young people and new families, this dire supply reality means they'll be forced to rent indefinitely.
And if they're forced to rent, they are entering a rental market that is also in crisis. But the nature of that crisis is shifting, according to the CMHC rental report.
That's right. The crisis has moved from one purely of inventory to one primarily of affordability.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we've seen a remarkable shift in national vacancy rates. The national rate surged to a 4-year high of 3.1% in October 2025. That's up from 2.2% the year before.
That's a huge jump, a 40% jump.
It is. It means vacant rental units are climbing faster than new renter demand. And this surge is aggressive in the key markets. Toronto hit 3.0%, and Vancouver reached a whopping 3.7%, which is a 25-year high. So it suggests that new supply coming online and tighter temporary immigration policies are having an effect on availability.
So if availability is improving, why aren't renters finding any relief in their monthly budgets?
Because of sticky prices. Despite the rising vacancies, the cost of an average 2-bedroom apartment nationally hit $1,550 in 2025. That's up 5.1% from 2024.
And how does that compare to wages?
That growth rate significantly outpaces the 3.5% jump in average wages over the same period. So you have more choice, perhaps, but you are less able to afford that choice. The cost of living is rising faster than your ability to pay for it.
And this crisis is, you said, it's geographically narrowing.
Yeah. The rate of rent growth has slowed a little bit in Toronto and Vancouver, but it has accelerated alarmingly in previously affordable markets like Halifax and Montreal. So it's much harder now to save money by moving to a smaller city. It's trapping people in affordability nightmares where their saving capacity is basically zero.
And this shortage and high-cost environment, it inevitably leads to complex social and political impacts.
Absolutely. The sources reflect severe tension between tenants and property owners. Toronto community housing evictions, for instance, they reached a 10-year high in 2026.
Prompting calls for more leniency.
And you're also seeing calls for some pretty hardcore, unpopular policy measures from tenant advocacy groups. Things like punitive taxes on landlords who are seen to be hoarding property, outright expropriation of rental units, and banning Airbnb units en masse to force them back into the long-term rental stock.
The whole political climate around rental housing is just becoming increasingly toxic.
Well, and meanwhile, you see minor safeguards being enforced. There was a specific recent decision by the Landlord Tenant Board, the LTB, that refused a landlord's request for an eviction. So there's increasing complexity and scrutiny, but the overall picture is still one of deep structural stress, where rental prices are outpacing incomes, despite this temporary rise in vacancies.
Okay, so to really understand the absurdity of the high persistent structural cost of urban living in the GTA, the cost that developers have to pass on to buyers, we need to zoom in on a single, seemingly minor factor that has become a major financial barrier. The parking spot.
Ah, yes, the humble parking spot.
It's no longer a simple amenity. It's a luxury good. A single underground parking space can cost a developer up to $120,000 just to construct, a cost that's immediately passed on to you, the consumer.
And for a condo buyer in the core, Wahi found that adding a parking space can easily inflate the price of a 1-bedroom unit by up to $200,000.
It's truly remarkable. We're talking half the price of a small house outside the GTA just to ensure your car has a dry underground nap spot.
And this massive spiraling cost isn't accidental, it's policy-driven. Jennifer Keysmont, who's the CEO of development company Collective Marquee, she explained this traces back to a major 2022 city policy change related to water management.
Okay, what was the change?
That year, the City of Toronto required new developments to stop discharging foundation drainage and groundwater into the municipal sewer system.
Which used to be common practice, right? Just pump it out.
Just pump it out. Now, developers have to contain or manage it on site. And the standard and most expensive solution for below-grade parking is known as bathtubing.
Bathtubing? That sounds extremely technical and very expensive. Can you break down what that involves?
It's exactly what it sounds like. To prevent groundwater from seeping in, you have to completely seal the lower levels of the parking garage. You're essentially building a sealed concrete bathtub underground.
And that requires heavy concrete specialized waterproofing.
All of it. It dramatically increases construction costs, often adding six figures to the price of each and every car space. This policy, while necessary for the city's infrastructure, fundamentally hiked the cost of creating density in the core.
And because of these astronomical costs, the city has responded by changing the rules, essentially throwing the decision back to the market.
Right. Toronto removed zoning rules requiring parking minimums in 2022, and they're currently reviewing visitor parking minimums. They're hoping developers will just reduce parking counts to lower the sale price.
So is that working?
Well, developers like Keysmont confirmed that while removing parking entirely in an area with poor transit would be committing suicide, the units just wouldn't sell. Projects with fewer spaces have a better chance of approval in transit-rich areas.
But the market is deciding.
The market is deciding. Richard Lyle of Rescon thinks this is the sensible path. If you want parking, you can pay the premium. If you don't, you shouldn't be forced to subsidize it.
But this shift toward density without cars, it's creating its own set of social costs, particularly when it comes to visitor parking.
That's a critical societal consideration. Councillor Lily Cheng raised concerns that the reduction or outright lack of visitor parking minimums can have genuinely negative mental health effects on residents.
Explain that connection, because that's not an obvious consequence of urban planning.
Well, Cheng's point is rooted in social connection. While you, as a resident, can choose not to own a car, you can't choose whether your family, your elderly relatives, or your friends rely on driving to visit you. If there's no visitor parking, it creates a huge logistical and financial challenge for residents to have people visit easily. And over time, that friction just chips away at your social support networks, increasing isolation and impacting mental well-being. It's a profound and often overlooked consequence of this type of dense development.
So we have a market where prices have corrected, but buyers are paralyzed by these external economic pressures. And policy decisions, whether they're intentional supply cuts like the PBO flagged, or necessary but expensive fixes like bathtubbing, are ensuring that the underlying structural cost of housing just continues to climb. The cost is high and the confidence is low.
That's the perfect summary.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this complex, contradictory reality of the GTA housing market heading into 2026. Let's distill the crucial takeaways for you, the listener, as you navigate this uncertain year. First, for buyers, the key message is that leverage is currently on your side. Negotiation has replaced urgency. Inventory is high. Sellers are showing price concession. If you have secured employment confidence and stable financing, you should be acting now to take advantage of this market reset.
Before the looming supply gap makes homes scarce and expensive again?
Exactly. That massive, unaddressed structural deficit we detailed, that's the long-term story. Patience is being rewarded right now, but that window of buyer power may not last forever. Second, for homeowners, actively prepare right now for the mortgage renewal shock in 2026. 60% of mortgages are renewing. Your payments could climb by up to 20%, adding hundreds of dollars of unavoidable monthly stress.
And you have to aggressively budget and mitigate against those soaring costs in insurance, food, and services.
Right. Remember the actionable advice. Proactively discount farm your insurance policies immediately to maximize your savings against those persistent, climate-driven premium hikes. And third, for real estate stakeholders, the data is unambiguous. Consumer confidence, driven primarily by employment security and stability in global trade, not just interest rates, is the most critical missing ingredient for a sustained market recovery. The market only moves decisively when people believe in their future income enough to absorb all these compounding cost of living increases.
And this leaves us with a final provocative thought to mull over as we move into 2026. Despite the clear evidence that Canada desperately needs millions of new homes, and despite the government itself acknowledging a 65,000 unit annual housing gap just to stabilize the market, federal funding for crucial existing housing programs is being cut by more than half.
It's a huge disconnect.
It is. And furthermore, the new high-profile government housing initiative is projected by the Independent Parliamentary Budget Officer to add a laughably small 5,200 net new units per year. So this raises an extremely important question that requires some long-term reflection. In a country fundamentally reliant on strong immigration and population growth to fuel its economy, how will the structural affordability crisis ever be truly solved if the government's stated efforts are only adding less than 10% of the required homes needed to close that supply deficit? The political will clearly does not match the economic and demographic reality, and that suggests that while the current market may be quiet, the underlying affordability issue is just set to explode again once consumer confidence finally manages to return.
Powerful and very sobering points on the disconnect between policy and reality. Thank you for diving deep into these complex sources with us today.
My pleasure.
As the market shifts toward this negotiated environment where realism and detailed budgeting are absolutely key, it's vital to have expert guidance tailored to your specific situation. Stay informed, and if you are looking to navigate this complex negotiated market, we encourage you to contact Manoj Atri, Realtor with RE/MAX Hallmark Realty Ltd. for guidance.